You know by now that we're all about the journey. June's journey, that is. I feel this game was made for us specifically. It's the closest I've come to feeling like I've been dropped in the middle of a mystery novel set in the 1920s.
That's because you get to play as June, a globe-trotting flapper/amateur sleuth who lives to solve mysteries. You get to visit all sorts of fascinating places, from Paris to Cuba. You beat levels by identifying hidden objects in the scene. And we found that the more we play, the sharper our observational skills become.
The game is delightful, and a wonderful way to relax. I'll often pull my phone out and play it when I've got a free moment, like I'm on hold with an archive, or I'm waiting for a courthouse to open up in the morning. I'm currently on Chapter 16, meaning I'm searching for the son of June's housekeeper, who's on the run from New Orleans gamblers and the police. It's a wild time.
We know our audience is filled with folks who love a good mystery. Now is your chance to try your hand at being a sleuth yourself. Discover your inner detective when you download June's Journey for free today on iOS and Android.
Content warning. This episode contains discussion of domestic abuse, including the violent abuse of an infant and murder.
Today we want to share with you 5 stories about people from Chautauqua County, New York. 2 men,
Kevin Hornburg and Matthew Vetromile.
1 woman,
Melinda Jewell.
1 teenage girl,
Patricia Fairbanks.
and 1 16-month-old child.
Nayla Hodnett.
What links these people is that all of them have either gone missing or been murdered, and none of them have gotten justice.
Their stories will be told today by Merry Williams-Diers. She's an advocate for the missing and murdered of Western New York, and the founder of the Facebook page WNY Missing and Unidentified Persons Network, and the podcast Meddling in Mysteries, Murder, and Missing on Mondays with Mary. She's doing commendable work to help raise awareness of some of these cases. My name is Anya Kane. I'm a journalist.
And I'm Kevin Greenlee. I'm an attorney.
We first connected while looking into the Burger Chef murders, an Indiana cold case. Together, we built a spreadsheet documenting hundreds of cases of restaurant-related homicides. That original spreadsheet gave way to our podcast, The Murder Sheet.
Now we maintain that same research-centric, investigative approach as we look into all sorts of homicides, including unsolved cases, historical crimes, and, of course, restaurant murders.
We don't just chat about the headlines. Our podcast is a platform for our journalism. The Murder Sheet focuses on investigative reporting, thoughtful analysis, thorough research, and in-depth interviews. We're the Murder Sheet.
And this is Searching for Justice for the Missing and Murdered of Chautauqua County, New York. Can you tell us about the Patricia Fairbanks case?
She was a 14-year-old girl in 1972. This wasn't a highly publicized case. It was in the newspapers back in 1972, but it's a case that just went completely quiet in media. Annual things were not being held, I think namely because her mother passed away due to an untimely death, due to a lot of guilt and basically some very tragic losses within her family in a short period of time, her daughter being one of them. Patricia went missing on November 28th, 1972, around 5:30 p.m. She went walking to the corner pharmacy for her mother for some cotton swabs. I guess she made it to the corner store. She was 15 cents shy. The pharmacist said, don't worry about it. And she said, no, I'll be back with the 15 cents. So Patricia returned back to her home on 19 West 9th Street here in Jamestown, made it back home, got the 15 cents from her mother, and returned to the pharmacy. Well, she didn't return. She left out of her house. This pharmacy was only about 2 blocks away, if that. Went to go return and never made it back to the pharmacy, according to the pharmacist that was on working that night. She never made it back. There was a shortcut that a lot of kids took back in the day from where she was at to get to that pharmacy. It was basically because there's a house in the middle of all that and doesn't have a sidewalk to both places. So there was an easement that she was walking basically that cut out right to the pharmacy. So she would have passed through here, and she obviously made it through there a couple of times. But according to a lot of the neighborhood kids, the property owner of 14 West 9th Street did not appreciate them using that as a shortcut, would yell at them all the time, and that would actually be who a lot of people named as the main suspect in 1972. She wasn't located for almost a month. She went missing on November 28th, 1972, and she was actually found behind the home of where she would have been taking that shortcut on December 29th, 1972. Home was 19 West 9th Street, and she was found basically kitty corner at 14 West 9th Street. Basically, Mom could only identify her due to the clothing. Her death was ruled homicide, blunt force trauma, as well as strangulation. The nickel and the dime that her mom provided her to return to the corner store was found nearby her body. And back then, the pathologist ruled that she had probably only been deceased for 3-5 days before her discovery. So that put the investigation into where she was between November 28th and the discovery of her remains. Was she being held hostage? And I think a lot of the early investigation kind of focused on that, for the local coroner to later state that due to the cold weather, it could have preserved her, that maybe she was there since the day she went missing on November 28th, 1972, which has always been the thought of her mother and family. She was still in the same clothing that she left for that day. She had went to the corner store, came back home, made it back within, 15, 20 minutes, went to go back, never returned, and was located in where they said she would have taken that shortcut to return to the store. Whatever happened to her happened right there. And her discovery was actually made by possibly the main suspect's 15-year-old son at the time. Police tried for a deathbed confession in 1981 that sadly never came. Small town rumor has it that one of his sons and a previous daughter-in-law told others prior to them passing away that they knew he did it. And again, we definitely didn't have DNA back then, but they did secure an entire, basically they called it the Patricia Fairbanks room. They had an entire room of evidence related to her case, and her case was just recently transferred to the cold case unit, and I know they have intentions to run modern DNA on all of that evidence. Unfortunately, like I said, the main suspect, they tried for a deathbed confession in 1981, so he is unfortunately deceased, and no earthly justice will come from it, but it will give her sister answers, hopefully, that she has been waiting for over 50 years from.
Absolutely, and well said. With the main suspect, other than the fact that obviously he had means, given that this was his property, and also a history of behaving in an aggressive way towards kids who were cutting through, were there other creepy aspects about him or his history that pointed towards him?
Not necessarily. I mean, some people say he was a pretty good guy and don't suspect that he had anything to do with it. That's directly from a grandchild of his. However, through rumors, I have heard that his sons have said that he was an alcoholic. He was fairly aggressive with them. I think the main thing that pointed to him was the close proximity of her body being located in their backyard and it going unfound for a month. He had some teenage boys in the house. It was still winter, and the newspaper articles are so conflicting, and that's why it was a very hard case to actually research. Some accounts say that the coins were found in her hands. Some say they were found nearby her body. Some say the 15-year-old boy was going to dig up a bottle cap that he was going to add to his collection. But if you think on that for a little while, it was November. What would make you go back to find a bottle cap before springtime is kind of strange, but other reports say he was playing with his dog in the backyard. So a lot of missed reports, and I think with her mother passing away and the initial investigators retiring and passing away, that it kind of just went cold. And after him being deceased, a lot of times, unfortunately, they get put into the pile where they aren't as focused on anymore once there isn't anybody to hold accountable, which I think is very sad. But, you know, in 1972, there wasn't much more you could do without the DNA and the things that we have available to us today to kind of try and give this family answers. I know that everybody was interviewed, but again, back when this happened, I know her sister said that they came to her job and pulled her out to go be interviewed. And they released in the newspaper article that she had taken a lie detector along with the mother and Patricia's boyfriend at the time, in which she said she was never given a lie detector test. In fact, how it appeared, how they took her out of work, she said, I think people at my job probably thought me to be the main suspect in my sister's case when they were actually just coming to ask me questions and asking me to come down for that matter. I know her boyfriend at the time was questioned. I can't confirm lie detector because, again, that article said all three of them had it. He drove around town looking for Patty and looking for clues alongside the rest of the family until his battery quit working. And then he actually went and stole a battery to put into his car to continue looking for Patricia and ended up in jail for that. I believe he has since passed. They were only 14 years old, so it was just puppy love type of situation. Definitely not ever mentioned as somebody being potentially responsible for her death.
That's all very interesting and very sad. Is there anything else you wanted to say about that particular case?
Just that they had a second opinion. Both the coroner, the late Thomas J. Costanzo, believed that she had only been there a couple of days, and then the local pathologist disagreed with that. However, after an exhumation ordered by the former DA, there was a second opinion on that, and she also confirmed that she believed her to have only been there 6 days, and I think that is what kind of sent this investigation into a tailspin, because the investigation focused on where she was from November 28th to December 29th when she was located. I do believe that it's very possible that the entire time she was there since the day that she went missing, especially being that it was wintertime. We had just had a fresh snow. It's possibly why she wasn't discovered sooner is because of the fresh snow. But I think that gives a good cover on that case.
HelloFresh is America's #1 meal kit for a reason. HelloFresh really wants you to have it all. Free time and fresh, tasty food. That's why they take care of all the meal planning and deliver the ingredients so everything you need to whip up a delicious meal arrives right to your door. We love the convenience of getting high-quality, pre-measured ingredients shipped right to our door so we can have the fun of cooking meals together in the kitchen without the pressure of worrying about whether or not we have all the items we need.
And let me stress that when we say high-quality ingredients, we really mean it. The last time I was in the grocery store, some of the produce I saw looked like it had been sitting out for weeks. And that is frustrating because this is the peak time for summer produce. Well, HelloFresh makes sure that their ingredients travel from the farm to your front door in less than 7 days. And when something is that fresh, it simply tastes better.
This is another great reason to try out HelloFresh. And remember, Murder Sheet listeners get a special discount.
Go to HelloFresh.com/MSheet50 and use code MSheet50 for 50% off plus free shipping. Again, go to HelloFresh.com/MSheet50 and use code IMSHEET50 for 50% off plus free shipping. Find out why HelloFresh is America's #1 meal kit.
We are so delighted to work with our sponsor, Brilliant Earth. This is a company that offers some of the most brilliant and romantic engagement rings and wedding bands out there, all the while ensuring a commitment to ethical sourcing and sustainability.
If you're looking to get married or to become engaged, or even if you're just searching for a special piece of fine jewelry, you have to check out their website. They make browsing so easy.
They even let you design your own perfect engagement ring, or you can shop by style. I love the delicate willow rings, along with the 3-stone Nadia rings and the classic freesia rings. It's so hard to choose.
And you don't have to worry about the ethical implications of your purchase. Your special gift, your engagement ring, your wedding band should never be tarnished by the idea that the gems or materials came from an abusive system.
See, Brilliant Earth has a commitment to beyond conflict-free diamonds. That means one thing. They only accept diamonds from mining operations in countries that strictly follow international labor, trade, and environmental standards. Fewer than 1% of other diamond suppliers meet Brilliant Earth standards.
You can feel good about your purchase, knowing that you're supporting a brand that actually cares about its ethical impact and is committed to fostering better standards in the jewelry business.
Check out all of their beautiful pieces at brilliantearth.com. That's brilliantearth.com.
Why don't we talk about Kevin Hornburg?
Okay, well, that one I can do from the top of my memory. That is actually the case that I started with from beginning to now. Unfortunately, it still remains unsolved, but Kevin is very near and dear to my heart because since I took this on in February 2021, he is the first person that I started with the family from the very beginning of the case until now. Kevin went missing on November 21st, 2021 from Prendergast Avenue here in Jamestown, New York. And it's very sad. He was a 56-year-old man, had a previous traumatic brain injury, had a plate in his head. He basically shuffled at this point, didn't walk, but if he were to leave his house, he was either with his sister or the furthest he would walk outside of the home is to the corner store just about 2 blocks from his home. However, he didn't state that he was going anywhere that day. He was living with his brother, Bob, at the time. They were roommates. From what I'm told, Kevin kept a very tidy home before Bob moved in, but Bob brought some shady characters around, so things kind of progressed where on a regular basis there were some strange characters that weren't necessarily in the right state of mind, so trying to get accurate information as to where Kevin went or what he said leading up to this have been very far and few between and not very reliable information. But a lot of people said, Kevin left the apartment that day around 4:30, said he was going outside to get some wood. That's all we heard originally. Just recently, we were talking to one of those friends that said, and we also heard in the very beginning that Kevin was planning to help a neighbor plastic some windows. And we never heard much on that until recently. We spoke to other sources that told us his neighbor's window had got broken out, probably due to a robbery or something of that nature, and that he planned on fixing it. So I'm kind of gathering that all of that is related. The people that thought he was leaving the house to go look for wood, that seemed not very normal when we were originally asking about it, but upon learning the new details that he planned on helping a neighbor fix a window, we were originally told that he was planning to help plastic those windows. But really, that is all that anybody can come up with as far as where Kevin went when he left his apartment that day is next door. There was no video surveillance of him making it to the corner store. We've done extensive searches of the neighborhood to know that he did not endure a medical emergency while walking to the store. So really what happened, family, I believe we initiated contact. I reached out to them on December 1st. So this is already about a week and a half past when he went missing. So we did lose some critical time there, but it was Thanksgiving time. So very family-oriented time. I was a little busy. They hadn't reached out personally at that time, but around, I believe, November 28th, they started circulating Facebook posts that Uncle Kevin was missing. If anybody had seen him, please reach out. And that's when I finally reached them on December 1st and said, how can we help? Can we get a flyer made? What are the details? And so we started searches on December 1st, boots on the ground. About 3 weeks into our search, we found out that there was a video surveillance right across the street from Kevin's house that would have told us if Kevin left the house on foot, if he got into a vehicle, if something happened right outside of his home. And unfortunately, due to the time passing, again, I didn't initiate contact until December 1st. We still didn't find out for a couple of weeks about that video surveillance. So unfortunately, it was overwritten and that answer was never found out. So really, there is very vague details surrounding the disappearance of Kevin Hornburg. There's not much known. He left his house that day, and the police have been working his case diligently. I know that his brother has taken a polygraph and passed it as far as knowing or being responsible for Kevin. A lot of heat was put on Bob originally because they were roommates, of course. He was the last one to see Kevin along with the shady characters inside the house, and said that Kevin left the house to go look for wood. One thing that, again, kind of added the suspicion to that is when we were doing the initial searches, his brother did not come out and join them, but rather stayed inside the home. But it is now believed that that's mostly because he was under the influence and didn't want seen by people. They tend to get paranoid and stuff when they are doing things that they shouldn't be. So we don't believe any longer that he really does know where Kevin went. He wasn't in his right state of mind. He was, according to family, kind of nodding off in the days to follow, where they were coming in and asking what happened to Kevin, where did he go, what was he wearing. But Bob and the people inside the home, to our knowledge, were the last people to see Kevin and are not responsible for his disappearance. So once Kevin walked outside of that door, all we can imagine is somebody on that street had it out for Kevin that we didn't know had it out for him, and something bad happened. The captain of JPD has done additional interviews that did make them say that they believe foul play is suspected, that we covered the basis of him not enduring a medical emergency, him not moving out of state. He hasn't accessed funds or finances since that time. So there is a Crime Stoppers reward through Western New York Crime Stoppers for up to $2,500 for the arrest of whoever is responsible for the disappearance of Kevin Hornburg.
Absolutely. That's such a tragic case. And it seems like so frustrating that people who might have seen something don't remember it, or there's maybe drugs involved, or, something, people were not in their right state of mind to possibly be more helpful in that case.
Yes. And being that he was so vulnerable, like I said, nobody said that he had any enemies. Everybody kind of loved Kevin. What he'd walk to the corner store for actually pretty daily or pretty regularly is his beer. So he was pretty down to earth, a homebody, didn't make enemies as far as we know, wasn't in the state to be out there making enemies. Who would have wanted anything bad to have happened to Kevin is beyond me. And again, locally, small town, somebody needs to know something. But again, that area is a very rough crowd to get information from, either because they don't know anything or because they do know something and are scared to come forward. So we are still pleading with our community. If they know anything, to please come forward. Call Captain Samuelson at Jamestown Police Department at 716-483-7536. And we will continue searching for Kevin as we receive tips. It is one of the ones that we continually conduct regular searches for as we receive information. We actually have a location that we are going to search a little bit more in depth. We planned on starting to work outside of Jamestown because we have checked every nook and cranny of Jamestown. However, there was one big area that we didn't have a lot of people, and that area has recently been tipped off. So we are going to revisit that area here in Jamestown. But after that, a lot of rumors surfaced regarding Kevin about being between here and Buffalo. So where that spot is, or where he potentially went to go meet people between here and Buffalo. One rumor was that his brother Bob possibly sent him with fake drugs to meet some men from Buffalo with fake products, and that is what resulted in something like that happening, or somebody that travels frequently to and from Buffalo possibly having something to do with his disappearance. Who that person is, I do not know. I'm hoping local law enforcement does, but still a lot of holes in all the stories, and his sister didn't think that sounded very like Kevin, especially knowingly that he would not sell an ear beer to somebody, that he would not potentially or purposely go sell somebody fake product. Now, whether they had him fooled and thought that it was real product, but again, I don't think his brother would pass the lie detector if that was the scenario. So very mysterious and still very much looking for answers, and we won't give up until we have them.
Going on to our next case, I was wondering if you could tell us about the case of 16-month-old, I may be pronouncing her first name wrong, but Nayla Hodnett?
Yes, the youngest victim of any unsolved crime here in Chautauqua County. So it, of course, pulls at the heartstrings a little extra. Not that all of them don't, but a 16-month-old is defenseless and couldn't speak for herself. So Nayla was 16 months old and went to the hospital on the night of April 16th, 2014, here to our local hospital. They transferred her to Buffalo Children's Hospital the night of April 16th, 2014. She was unfortunately pronounced deceased the morning of April 17th, 2014. The attending physician at Buffalo Children's Hospital testified that she worked quickly to try and raise Nayla's blood and oxygen levels, as both were extremely low upon her arrival. She further stated that the infant sustained significant trauma to her abdomen and pancreas. The attending physician went on to testify that she had never seen blunt force trauma this severe previously, and that because of these injuries, Nayla was already expiring upon arrival at the Children's Hospital. So we'll backtrack a little bit on that. I say testified because they did end up bringing forth charges on one of the two adults that were in the home the morning before her going to the hospital the night of April 16th, 2014. The two adults at home were her mother and the mother's live-in boyfriend. That mom basically reported that she had considered having adopt Nayla previous to this happening, was basically like a stepfather role to Nayla. That she had stepped out that morning. Nayla seemed fine, her normal self, checked on her resting before she walked to the corner store that day to grab a couple of items for lunch. When she returned home, she noticed that Nayla had thrown up, but just assumed that it was a flu that her brother had. So she didn't think anything of it until later, when symptoms were getting much more severe. Her and the family brought her to WCA. The one that they ended up charging was the mom's live-in boyfriend, Tyler Cash Perez, 35 years old. They originally charged him with second-degree murder and first-degree manslaughter, a 2-count indictment, in which, after all of this was said and done, he was found not guilty. He was the only one home, according to Mom, when she went to the corner store to grab the items for lunch. And then the symptoms started after she returned home. She noticed throw up in the bed and Nayla getting progressively worse throughout the day. The prosecutor stated that Perez allegedly committed the crime while Mom was at the store that day. There were unfortunately no eyewitnesses in the case. Perez rejected a proposed plea deal in the beginning, which called for a guilty plea to first-degree manslaughter, and that would have brought a determinate sentence of 15 years in prison. Basically, the prosecution knew from the very beginning, with no eyewitnesses, that this was going to be a fast trial, in which it was. The death was ruled a homicide from blunt force trauma, The maternal aunt, Camille Hodnett, continues to seek justice for her niece, Nayla, and says somebody needs to be held accountable. She very much believes her niece was abused leading up to this. I do believe there were also previous injuries discovered, which I didn't write down specifically which those injuries were. I know in some places it's mentioned that sexual abuse was even a possibility in this case, which I hate to even bring that up regarding a 16-month-old child. I'm shaking even talking about it. I can't even imagine what her aunt goes through on a daily basis to know that there were two adults home, but due to neither of them saying that they've seen the other one do this, there are no eyewitnesses, and nobody is being held accountable in any form or fashion. And I can understand if they couldn't push the murder charge or the first-degree murder, but at the very least, some very severe neglect charges should be present. The attending physician said she had never seen blunt force trauma to this degree at the Children's Hospital in Buffalo, and which is a very large hospital, serves a lot of our community in the Western New York area. They're considered one of our better hospitals, so that is where a lot of our local serious cases get transferred to. And just those words that she had never seen anything to this extent and that the victim was a 16-month-old, to me, is just very hard to digest. And again, this case went very quiet after Tyler Perez was tried and found not guilty. I haven't seen anything in the news since, except maybe her aunt still seeking answers. Other than that, it has been very quiet. I don't know if they can do anything after they charge somebody and they are found not guilty, what the game plan can or will be from there. But I do hope this little angel gets some form of justice. She wasn't able to speak for herself the night she went to the hospital. In the case of, an adult victim that might have been able to say what happened before passing away, she was never given that opportunity. I feel like as a community, we need to be this little girl's voice, and I plan to do that. When I realized how quiet this case was, a lot of cases I did not start to advocate for that were unsolved, where somebody was charged, because I didn't really think that anything could be done. But I do know that the cold case unit has taken on other cases here locally where somebody has been tried and found not guilty, and they plan to still look at them with a fresh set of eyes. So I don't know what can be done, but I'm assuming something can be on their end. So I'm hoping that they also consider or hear about the Nayla Hodnett case. I can't confirm if her case was for sure one of the ones transferred to them recently or not. So I can't say if her case sits on the desk of Jamestown Police Department, the district attorney, or the unsolved Chautauqua County cold case unit. But I know that Jamestown Police Department would welcome tips if anybody has them regarding her case. But really, there are only two people that possibly know what happened to her, and neither one of them are being held accountable at this time.
Reading about what happened to that baby is just absolutely sickening. And thank you for sharing her story and advocating for her and her family. I wanted to ask, in terms of her aunt, who seems like very much committed to getting justice for her, do we know what she maybe wants to happen? Maybe you mentioned neglect charges possibly being applicable here. I don't know what the statute of limitations on that is, but as
Me neither.
Yeah, so we're not sure though.
And I know she said in one of the things she wants to see somebody held accountable. I know this is just me thinking what she wants, but it doesn't state further exactly how she wants them held accountable, if she still wants, somebody held accountable for murder, because at the end of the day on the death certificate, it does state homicide. Somebody killed this little girl and is going unpunished. So I think she very much wants somebody to be held accountable in the highest degree. And if I were her, I wouldn't personally be content with neglect charges, but I think that it's sad that not even that has happened, at least to my knowledge. As a backdrop, if you can't get the murder charges, somebody should be held accountable, and I think the aunt is still very much pushing for somebody being responsible for taking the life of her niece more than neglect and abuse. But I think it all goes hand in hand, and all of it needs done, basically. But at the very least, I'm shocked that somebody isn't being held accountable since 2014 for abuse, neglect. These people are out living their lives while there's a little babies that never really got to know what life was all about. That's about all I have for you regarding Nayla right now. I don't want to put words out there on behalf of her aunt. That is somebody that I haven't spoken to directly. Nayla was one of the cases that I just recently started advocating for and made a flyer for, because I was making a comprehensive list of all of the missing and unsolved cases here in Chautauqua County, because I noticed we didn't have one comprehensive list. The unsolved are listed on our Chautauqua County cold case website, and most of the missing are listed in the NamUs database. However, there is nowhere collectively that you can see all of the missing and unsolved cases here in Chautauqua County. So she came on my, not that I didn't know about her case previously, but again, I didn't know how to further that case with somebody being charged and found not guilty. But I wasn't going to leave her out of that comprehensive list as being resolved or unresolved yet. So just another recent one that I have taken up along with the next case we plan to discuss, actually.
Why don't you start telling us about that case?
Okay, that is the case of Western New York native Matthew Vetromile. Again, I've had his case, but I've never really taken it the next step other than making a flyer and sharing it, because he did not go missing here in Western New York. He had just recently moved to Orlando, Florida, and that is where he went missing from on March 1st, 2021, from the iDrive Monumental Movie Land Hotel in Orlando, Florida, where he was residing with a girlfriend whose name, at least on Facebook, is Kisha Cash. She has given a variation of different stories to different family members over the years. I know originally she basically said she had went to bed that night. They were drinking the night before. He wasn't usually a drinker, but he had gotten, I can't remember the exact alcohol, but I think Fireball, and she had gotten some vodka that night. They did some drinking. She was passed out the next morning. When she woke up, Matthew was gone, and he had taken his shaving stuff with him, which I think is weird. Out of all of your belongings in a hotel, just your shaving stuff is gone. But that's what she said, that Matthew and his shaving items were gone when she woke up. Later, she told another family member that she knew that when he left with a drug dealer that he was never coming back. So that's alarming, because we never knew that he left with a drug dealer. However, according to many people, later his suitcase was with that drug dealer, surprisingly enough. And he said that Kisha's mom gave it to him because she didn't like how Matthew was behaving and was going to ask him to leave, and that Kisha's mom threw it out because of his behavior, and that he seen it and scooped up his suitcase, basically. And that's the only belonging that we know that Matthew traveled with, because there were times in his life where he was living homeless. Obviously, at the time he was not. He was in a hotel with a girlfriend. But at previous times, Matthew has been homeless in Florida and Texas areas with previous girlfriends. However, this time he was actually receiving a Social Security check, and his beneficiary or payee, whatever you want to call it, was his sister. So when he needed money, he would reach out to his sister. She last heard from him at around 11:30 that morning, saying that he wanted money out of his finances to run a different hotel room in that same room, that him and Kisha weren't getting along, and he needed a separate room. From what I'm told, he tried to call his mother, I believe it was, several times. I don't know if she was at work or whatever, but couldn't get the phone right away. And by the time they were trying to reach back out to him to get him money to secure that other room, he was unreachable. So that's a case that I think it's very important that we get heard nationally. A lot of my cases right here in Western New York stay in Western New York, but unfortunately, this one is a case where he went to Orlando. I can't remember exactly what year he moved down there, but the information that I'm been given from family is kind of alarming. I guess he had a previous girlfriend that he and she used to use drugs together. So there was definitely substance abuse and mental health. Matthew had a diagnosis of schizophrenia. And when he was with this ex-girlfriend before Tisha, she had been living in Texas with Matt previously, homeless, as well as Jacksonville, and that she knew people that killed Matt. They were talking to her after he went missing, and she ended up surfacing back in Florida, in Orlando as well. And people said, why are you back in Orlando? And she said, I'm looking for Matt. She was trying to help the family kind of get information since they all reside here in Western New York. Mom goes down there pretty frequently to rehang flyers, ask around the homeless communities and populations if they know anything or have seen Matthew. And she said that she was looking for Matt. Eventually, she told the family that she needs to back off, that she has given all the information that she can safely give without ending up deceased herself. She said that if she kept talking, she'd be found floating in a river like Matt. She had a new boyfriend that I believe was part of the Aryan Brotherhood that she was dating while she was also in Orlando, supposedly looking for Matt. She said that if she kept talking to the family and finding out too much more, that she'd be found floating in a river like Matt. Now, Matt hasn't been found in a river, but Matt also hasn't been found. And actually, from what I'm told, a couple weeks later, that ex-girlfriend of his was found floating in a river in Texas. So I don't know if that's whatsoever related or if it's just hand in hand with a dangerous and risky lifestyle. She was a substance abuse user herself, so she told the family, I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but this is what I know, and kind of started telling the family what she was hearing from down in Florida, and eventually shut down and said that she would end up floating in a river like Matt if she kept talking, in which she was. So I still need to dig in a lot deeper as far as that story goes and what she was telling them. But I believe she very much thought that his girlfriend at the time knew more than what she was saying. So that's basically what I've got from Matthew as of right now. I know that he has not contacted his sister, which was his payee, since. The best case scenario, of course, for Matthew, we want people to still be on the lookout because these are just rumors that foul play is involved. Being that Matthew has lived homeless previously, best case scenario is that Matthew is living amongst a homeless population and doesn't have means to contact his family, or maybe in a dark enough spot mental health-wise where he doesn't wish to. They don't want to make him come home. They just confirm his safety. But they do think it's particularly weird that he hasn't reached out for finances that he knew he had, that he was contacting and on good terms with family, at least calling them every day, contacting them regularly, called mom an extensive amount of time. I think it was 17 times they said that day, and then just disappeared without a trace kind of thing. That doesn't seem to me like he didn't want to make contact with them. And even if he went missing and went amongst the homeless population, since 2021 would have reached out by now. But I do know personally that mental health can bring you to some very dark places. And we have found people that siblings or family thought for sure was deceased, but they were amongst the homeless population. So best case scenario is that he is. So we still do not want people giving up on looking for Matthew. And here's the biggest part with that. There have been a lot of possible sightings. People have tracked down the wrong Matthews a couple of times. We really need people taking pictures to confirm these sightings of Matthew, because family not living in Florida, A, it takes travel time to get there. B, they're chasing down a bunch of different Matthews and possible sightings without them being confirmed tips. And that takes a lot of time, money, to get from New York to Florida on mom's behalf. So it's spending a lot of time that where if somebody would simply take a picture, family could confirm if that's Matthew or not before making the trip to Florida, or us trying to get boots on the ground in Florida looking for the possible Matthew for it to not be him. The picture could kind of resolve that. If people think they see Matthew, please, please, please take a picture. There are flyers circulating. If you Google his name, you can find a lot regarding Matthew Vetromile. His brother and his sister, his cousin, his mom have done several podcasts. He resembles his brother to great lengths. to the point where if you look at his brother in one of the video podcasts, you'll quickly know what Matthew would probably look like if you were to see him on the street. Of course, he may have lost a little weight if he has been living homeless since 2021. He may not be the weight that he went missing from, but I think looks would be there. Matthew does suffer from a lazy eye, so that is another definite identifying feature. So he has two identifying tattoos. One would be on his right bicep, which would be a conjoined Italian-American flag. And he has another one on his right forearm that is a deck of cards and dice. So those would be definite signs that you're looking at Matthew. Again, if you think you see him, we would guess probably Orlando, Florida area. Please, please, please take a picture. It's very possible that he has sought help for his mental health. We're hoping, but it's very possible that he has not and remains on the streets of Orlando. And every time his mom goes down there, either gets unlucky. We all know Florida's a big place. It's a very big area for one person to be traveling and looking for her son down there. It's a lot of work. I know many advocates have been involved, have went to Florida and are in Florida and actively looking for Matthew. So being that it's a big place, it's a big job for Mom that lives in New York to keep traveling down there without confirmed sightings. He has made no contact since 11:30 the morning that he went missing with family. And without confirmed sightings, it's a very big job for advocates or Mom to kind of track down who we think he could be or where he might be. But we definitely need Orlando, Florida residents looking out for Matthew. If you think you see him, taking the picture. That is the big part that needs stress, because Mom has went down there on possible sightings that weren't confirmed. It wasn't Matthew. And again, that's putting a lot of time, money, and effort into finding him without knowing for sure. I know before he disappeared in his last contact at 11:30, he did shoot off a text to one of his family members. I can't remember if it was Mom or sister, but he believed that somebody had drugged him and that he had been chloroformed or something to that extent. Again, that's hard to differentiate fact from fiction. Was he starting to grow paranoid from the substance abuse, or was he accurate in that somebody had drugged him that morning? Or was it possibly from being hungover because he wasn't normally a drinker and drank a large amount the night before with a girlfriend? That is yet to be confirmed, but I think it's strange that one of the last messages was very paranoid, almost knew that something bad was going to happen, and then for girlfriend to change the story that she knew he wasn't going to return after leaving with a drug dealer that was eventually found with a suitcase doesn't necessarily add up to just a missing person anymore, as much as I hope he is, best case scenario, living transient lifestyle either in Orlando or possibly back to Texas, because he was familiar with there as well as here in New York, but I don't believe he's returned here. But I think it's very important to get his case seen and heard by locals down in Orlando, Florida, because it's very hard for us to get accurate tips here in Western New York and act on them exponentially. Again, his case is being investigated by the Orlando Police Department, whose phone number is 321-235-5300.
We want to thank you for raising awareness, especially around these cases where it feels like the public could really make a difference for these families.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you guys giving this opportunity to help us get, especially Matthew's voice, heard nationwide. I don't believe that's a case that can be solved necessarily by our Western New York community, so we are counting on a whole nother state to help us find answers for Matthew's family. And we do have one more unsolved case here locally that I would hate to let go unsaid. It's that of Melinda Jewell that was working at the Resource Center at the time here on Foote Avenue in Jamestown, New York in 1993. She had left for break from her job and went over to the Tops Market to cash her check. I believe she left the building around 3:30 in the morning, which is an odd time, but it was only a block away. Jamestown was pretty safe in 1993, so she went to go cash that check just about a block and a half away. She walked to go cash that check, and she was seen on video surveillance cashing that check and never returned to work. So her coworker got a little nervous about that. She hadn't returned after an hour, so called the police. Within a couple of hours, Melinda's Melinda Jewell's body was located on Marion, which is kitty corner to Foot Avenue, which would have been the in-between her job on Foot Avenue and where she was walking to cash her check on Foot Avenue. Marion's a little side street that kind of divided the two. And she was located shot to death. And that's the strangest case, I'd say, out of them all, because Melinda was not a known drug user. Melinda lived a very normal life. Melinda was a mother to 3 children, a wife, and simply working and living her job. A lot of rumors in the very beginning said it might have been gang-related, basically like an initiation, random, and Melinda just got it because she was walking at 3:30 in the morning when they were doing this initiation. We weren't a highly gang-affiliated area in that time, I don't believe, and investigators don't believe that's related to her death either. Her case was recently transferred to the Chautauqua County Cold Case Unit, and the strange part about hers is the small town rumors. Again, I think they are very relevant. There may be some that are just rumors, but there's a little piece of fact in all of them circulating, I truly believe. And a lot of people ask, why Melinda? Because she's just so normal. Her life is normal. Nobody would ever have ill will towards her. Nobody ever arised as possible suspect, including her husband that was home with the children that night. And rumors surfaced that her co-worker at the time was in the middle of a nasty divorce with a husband that potentially worked for law enforcement, maybe not, but held a pretty citywide job from what I'm told. And she was in the middle of a nasty divorce with him, getting ready to take half of his life earnings, as the small town rumor has it. And she looked a lot like Melinda. So the rumor has it that it was a mistaken identity, that whoever shot Melinda that night actually was either hired or meant to shoot her coworker that looked similar to Melinda, and her leaving the resource center is what made them think that she was the coworker. And another thing that leads us to believe that is, I can't remember if it was a 38 caliber or whatever kind of Glock that was used to kill Melinda was only used by law enforcement in the 90s, not the average Joe having that type of gun at that time. So I know rumors and whispers around town have had it that it was either somebody in law enforcement or supplied the gun and hired the hit on her for the most part. So that one is very mysterious. Again, that one happened in 1993, still remains unsolved. I don't know if any physical evidence was collected other than maybe the shell casing for them to know how she was killed. But that is an unsolved homicide case here that eats away at a lot of people. I know that she remained at the top of the cold case investigations here in Jamestown since 1993. Her name was plastered on the captain of Jamestown Police Department's marker board since. He has very actively tried to find new leads in this case. And it seems like besides small town rumors, nobody is willing to come forward. I do believe somebody wrote a letter regarding her case. And in recent years, they have asked that person, if you were the writer of that note, to please step forward, that they might have enough information to solve her case. But otherwise, we're waiting for a confession for the most part, because we just don't know anything other than, I believe it was a dark colored vehicle. But again, this was 1993. If we aren't getting surveillance here in 2023 that can see clearly license plates and stuff like that, I don't think they could ever identify the exact make and model of the vehicle or the driver of that vehicle, and her case remains unsolved. Again, hers was just recently transferred to the cold case unit as well. I don't know if there's DNA that they can try to do in her case, but that is another reason why it is so important that they get these grants and funding approved, because a lot of these cases, hope and the family's hope is being reignited by the fact that these might be able to be resolved by DNA in some shape or form. And that's everybody's new hope, because these have remained unsolved for this many years. I think it's very important that we do get a hold of people that knew these people and get firsthand accounts as best we can before doing the DNA and stuff, so that if somebody's not here to give us the firsthand accounts, at least we have the files from the very beginning. But I think that's mostly it for Melinda. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't leave her out.
Absolutely. And that one sounds like just a very frustrating mystery for the family as well, just in terms of it just seems like such a senseless act to gun down this woman who's doing her job. As you said, she's an ordinary mother, ordinary wife, and something so horrible happens.
And unfortunately, her husband died without ever having answers too, but the 3 children are still very much looking for answers.
We want to thank you for being essentially an encyclopedia of these different cases and for all the advocacy you've done. And I want to ask you, for our listeners, how can they listen to more of your work, support your work, follow along some of these cases? What's the best way to do that?
Well, they can follow our podcast. Like I said, I'm not as into it as you guys are. I'm still beginning. I tend to keep them pretty short and sweet, to the point, because they get kind of, tumultuous after a while. And everybody locally has heard these cases 100 times, nothing new. So I'm doing my best to kind of dive a little deeper, get a little bit new information to disperse amongst our community. So if you would like to listen to those episodes of me discussing these cases with their family, please tune in and follow our podcast, Meddling in Mysteries, Murder and Missing on Mondays with Mary, or follow our page at Western New York Missing and Unidentified Persons Network. We always receive anonymous tips regarding any of these cases at wnymissingandunidentified@yahoo.com.
Absolutely. And we will certainly be including links to both of those in our show notes. And we would really encourage everybody to follow the page, listen to the podcast. And if you have information about any of these cases that we've talked with Mary about, please get in touch with the relevant authorities, get in touch with Mary. These families need answers, and there is something the public can do in some of these cases. And we should not be sitting on that information, and we should be trying to, be engaged citizens in helping these families out.
Absolutely. I always tell people, let's not be content with what we know. And a lot of people, like I said, the knowledge that's out there, we've kind of started accepting as fact, but that doesn't resolve these cases. Just letting it kind of go as a cold case and being complacent with that is not what I want to do. And that's why I don't care how cold these are, how many people might not know specific details. I think it's always worth revisiting. Everybody that knows that person, one little small detail, like I mentioned, can go missed in the very beginning of an investigation. And as much as we'd like to say every investigation is treated equally from the time somebody goes missing, unfortunately, that's not the case. And again, back in 1993, technology and investigation just isn't what it is today. So I always hold on to the thread of hope and tell the families, don't lose hope. There's always that chance that something new can come about, new information, new DNA technology, new something. So just don't give up and don't be complacent as a community with a cold case or cold cases.
Yes, absolutely. Because, there, by the grace of God, go us and our families. And we would, if this happened to any of us, we would absolutely want people to be engaged, to be speaking out, and to be keeping the pressure on, giving police the resources they need to close some of these out.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Mary, thank you so much. We really appreciate you doing this marathon interview with us. You're always a delight to have on. We'd love to have you back if there's anything you ever want to publicize. You did a great job. And
I'd love to. And thank you guys. Again, you guys are much more national than us. You guys are definitely helping us elevate our voices here from Western New York and scream it from the mountaintops to the rest of our country, because these cases need to go, heard and revisited. And sometimes all it takes is a new interest in them for something new to come. And I hope with the new unsolved case unit that happens, but we're counting on our community. And I wasn't even expecting your guys' assistance with all of these cases, but I definitely will never deny an interview regarding any of our local cases. Like I said, there are so many to cover. It's hard to pick and choose, but I would love to talk to you guys again in the future as well. And I appreciate you guys.
Absolutely. Well, we very much appreciate you too. And take care of yourself. Thanks for all your advocacy work, and thanks for talking to us. And we'll be in touch soon, and never be a stranger when you're reaching out to us.
Thanks so much to Merry Williams-Diers for taking the time to speak with us today.
Please check out our podcast, Meddling in Mysteries, Murder and Missing on Mondays with Mary. We'll link to that and more in our show notes.
Thanks so much for listening to The Murder Sheet. If you have a tip concerning one of the cases we cover, please email us at murdersheet@gmail.com. If you have actionable information about an unsolved crime, please report it to the appropriate authorities.
If you're interested in joining our Patreon, that's available at www.patreon.com/murdersheet. If you want to tip us a bit of money for records requests, you can do so at www.buymeacoffee.com/murdersheet. We very much appreciate any support.
Special thanks to Kevin Tyler Greenlee, who composed the music for The Murder Sheet, and who you can find on the web at kevintg.com.
If you're looking to talk with other listeners about a case we've covered, you can join the Murder Sheet discussion group on Facebook. We mostly focus our time on research and reporting, so we're not on social media much. We do try to check our email account, but we ask for patience as we often receive a lot of messages. Thanks again for listening. Hello, Murder Sheet listeners. Thank you so much for sticking with us until the very end. Just wanted to take a moment as we close out to thank our sponsor, HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. They are #1 for a reason, folks. Kevin and I have been loving the meals we're getting from HelloFresh. We're talking farm fresh produce, protein, all sorts of customizable options to get you exactly what you and your family need. It's very delicious, it's very nutritious, and it's quite affordable. So it ticks off all our boxes. We've been very happy with the service. And, would love for you guys to try it out if you're curious, or if you've tried it out in the past and enjoyed it, get that discount. It's hellofresh.com/msheet16. And then you're going to plug in the code msheet16. You get 16 free meals plus free shipping. You can't beat that. We've really been delighted by it. We work very hard on the podcast. It takes up a lot of time. It's our small business. We really enjoy the work. We enjoy conversing with all of you every week. But at the same time, it's nice for Kevin and I to kind of have something to do outside of office hours, and cooking these meals has been really fun. We're terrible in the kitchen, like disastrous. I mean, like I can tell you horror stories. I probably shouldn't get into it on the podcast, but I mean, some pretty disastrous moments involving our cooking. Nothing life-threatening, but definitely stuff that we tried to be overly ambitious about, and it either went horribly wrong or it ended up costing like way more than it should have because we didn't properly think about ingredients, and we're not gifted in the realm of the kitchen. But HelloFresh makes us pretend like we are, because everything is so pre-portioned and pre-planned, and the instructions are super clear, so you're not going to mess it up if you're like us. And if you're good in the kitchen, then it's just less of a hassle, and you get everything that you need. You don't have to run out to the grocery store. So super nice. Try it out. I've really enjoyed the meals that they've sent us so far. I can say that Kevin has too. I highlight that because Kevin is pretty picky when it comes to food. He does not like everything. He has pretty strong specifications and preferences. Very much cares about things like fresh produce and farm produce and things like that. So he's very picky, and I think the fact that he is really enjoying HelloFresh is a testament to the quality here, because he's a stickler for that kind of thing. And so if you are, I think you will enjoy it as well. And again, the URL and promo code that'll get you a sweet discount is hellofresh.com/msheet16. That's MSHEET 16. And use code msheet16. You're going to get 16 free meals plus free shipping. We hope you enjoy it. And again, thank